Welcome back. So today in this video, I want to show you guys how to go about implementing authentication in a Nuxt 3 application. We'll be using Nuxt 3, of course, and Payload. And for those of us who don't know, Payload is a headless CMS and application framework. It's meant to provide a massive boost to your development process, but importantly, stay out of your way as your app gets more complex. You can visit their website at payloadcms.com to learn more about it. I encourage you guys to go through the documentation of these frameworks as you'll actually learn a lot. And like it says on the website here, out of the box, Payload gives you a lot of things that you often need when developing a new website, web app, or a native app. So by default, MongoDB to store your data, a way to store, retrieve, manipulate data of any shape via full REST and GraphQL APIs, authentication, deep access to your data, file storage access control, and a beautiful admin UI that's generated specifically to suit your need. So when you create a Payload application, you actually get access to an admin UI. Let me just go ahead and show you what that looks like in the demo here. So on their website, you can just click on the demo link, put in this email address, and the password is demo. And your application will look something like this when you create Payload app. So over here we have collections, different groups, content, admin, and all of these are basically MongoDB collections that you can use to store data. So in your Mongo, when you create a Payload application and you create a users collection, you'll have this showing up on your dashboard. And of course, you can create a new user, you can edit a user, and that type of thing. So when you create a user, the fields that you define in your collection, they'll actually show up here. When you add authentication to your collection, you'll get this block that allows you to add email and password, right? You'll see more about this as we build out this application, but definitely check out the docs, guys. The documentation is very good. And like I said, this admin UI is really cool as well. So what will we be building? Simple application, like I said, just to demonstrate authentication in Nuxt 3. You can enter your email. I'm gonna enter test.test and a password 123456. Very secure. And click sign in. Nothing happens because we don't have an account just yet. Of course, if we check the console, there should be an error there. Yep, and here it is. It says the email or password provided is incorrect. Of course, for better user experience, you'd add like a notification plugin or create your own notification library if you feel so adventurous, and display this message to the user. Since we don't have an account, let's go ahead and create one. So I'm going to say this is a test user. Email is test@test.com, and the password 123456. Click on create account, and we're automatically logged in. And you see we get this as a notification here to say that we're logged in. If we refresh the page, we're still logged in. And if we try to go back to the login page, it redirects us to our admin page because we're already logged in. Of course, this is possible because we are protecting this admin route with a route middleware from Nuxt. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Middleware. Yes, so we're using a Nuxt route middleware to protect our admin page. Cool. All right, so now that we're logged in, like I said, if you try to go back to the login page, click enter, it will actually redirect you back to the dashboard page. But if we log out, we are not able to go back to the dashboard page. So without the help of the route middleware from Nuxt 3, we wouldn't be able to do this. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into the code and I'll show you what I did to actually achieve this. All right. So there are two ways to get started with Payload. You can actually add it to your Express application if you have one, or you can create a new application from scratch. The approach that we'll be taking in this video is to create it from scratch. Before you get started, it's good to have these installed. So Node.js version 10 or up, MongoDB, and Yarn or NPM. I think NPM comes with Node version higher than 14. So yeah, to get started, we just copy this command, npx create payload app, and paste it in our terminal. Let me just jump over to the terminal and create our application. So npx create payload app, and we're going to call this one server. Hit enter. Then it's going to ask us some questions. So we're going to choose a language. I'm going to go with TypeScript. We can choose one of three templates: blank, blog, or to do. I'm going to go with the blank one. And then we can enter the URL for our MongoDB instance. So I'm going to go with, let's see, MongoDB localhost. And the name of my database, let's say Auth 3. Hit enter, and you can see where it's creating our application here and installing the dependencies. All right, so once all the dependencies are installed, you can see we have our source folder here. And this is where all the code for Payload application will actually live. Well, not all, but most of it. We have this .env file, and it stored the URL to our Mongo database and a secret key. Now, Payload actually allows us to define different variables in here, and for variables that will be exposed to the admin UI, we have to prefix them with the payload underscore public underscore string. So let's say by default in our payload config file, we see where the server URL is located at localhost 3000. If we want to pass a dynamic URL to this server URL property in our build config, we can do that via env variables. But in order for it to be registered and used properly, we have to register the variable in a specific way. So let's say I want to add a port to this .env file. The port is actually for the server and not the admin UI. So I can just go ahead and paste that in like that. But for the server URL that's going to be exposed, I have to add the variable like this. So this is what I was referring to just now. Any variable that will be exposed on the admin side, it has to start like this. Let me just find the documentation for this and show it to you real quick. So here where it says admin environment vars, the important message: be careful about what variables you provide to your client side code. This goes without saying. There are some people out there that will actually try to tear your application down. So be careful of that. By default, the env variables are not provided to the admin panel for security reasons, of course. But Payload provides you with a way to still provide env vars to your front-end code. Payload will automatically supply any present env variable that are prefixed with the payload underscore public underscore directly to the admin panel. So this is why we're adding that to our env variable. Cool. So this public URL, I want it to be served here on localhost 3001 because our Nuxt application will be on localhost 3000. Because we'll be passing a cookie from our client to the server, we also want to set the CORS options, and CORS can accept an array of addresses or an asterisk for everything, but you can't use the asterisk with CORS if you're going to be including credentials in your request. So if you want to send an authorization header, you have to provide the URL of the client that will be sending that header directly to the CORS option on your server. This is basic Express stuff. For those of us who know Express very well, you know what I'm referring to. For those of you who don't, that's why I'm giving that explanation. So I think that will be it for our .env file. Or payload config, I don't think I actually went in depth with what this is, but this is the configuration file that tells payload how to do certain things. So you can see where we have the server URL. This tells payload what location to serve our admin UI at, the admin object, and of course, this object can have a lot of different properties within it. The first one being the user, and this user is just telling payload that, okay, I want you to use this collection as the collection to store my admin users, not my front-end users, my admin users. So whenever we log into our admin dashboard with payload, this collection will store all of the users that are created. Next up, we have the collections array, and this is just telling payload that these are the different collections that I want to store data in for my API. So we have a users collection here, and you can see where they're telling you how to add an example collection. And we'll get more into collections soon. This TypeScript is just telling where to output the TypeScript files and the schema output files for GraphQL. Like I mentioned before, we'll actually add some more values to this configuration file. The first thing that I want to add is actually the CORS option to tell payload config that, hey, I want you to register these settings or these URLs for CORS purposes. So we can just go ahead and add for CORS right here, and you can see we're getting the autocomplete. And we want to actually bring in this env variable into this file and add it to this CORS thing as the value. So how we're going to do that is we're going to import .env. So let's just import the .env package at the top, or as close to the top as possible. And then we're going to set the client URLs as a variable, and then assign it to CORS right here. We also want to add some CSRF protection to our API. So I'm just going to go ahead and assign the same value of client URLs to this key right here. And just in case you're wondering what this is, you can just come to the payload documentation, go to the configuration, and you'll see all the options that you can actually pass to this object here. So we just added the CORS, CSRF. You can read more about it here and why it's necessary if you want to learn more. Like I said, all of the things that I'm showing you are actually available in the documentation, and you can learn a lot more just by visiting the docs. So back to VS Code. Let's see, what other options do I want to add? I want to add the server URL. So instead of hard coding a string right there, we'll just pass that value in. The max depth and default depth, I want to add those as well. All right, so the default depth in the configuration file is just telling payload, by default, how far should it populate the different objects. We also want to add a max depth. So any populate request that is sent in by the user, it should not exceed 5 levels. We also want to add some upload constraint because we'll be adding a media collection to our payload application, so we can upload files and images. So we want to say we want to limit the file size to 10 megabytes. All right, so up to this point, we haven't taken a look at the server file that's right here. And this is actually our Express application. It's the entry point to our Express application. You can see where we're bringing in Express, bringing in payload, .env package. We are creating an Express application here. So right here, we're just telling our Express app that any request that comes in at the root location. So since we'll be running on port 3001, if we get a request at localhost 3001, we should just redirect it to 3001/admin. We're initializing the payload application right here, and we're passing in the secret, which is the secret that was created for us when we created our application here. The Mongo URL, which is in our env file as well, that's right here. And the Express application. So these three properties, they are actually required. And we have an onInit function that's called. So as soon as the application, the payload application is initialized, then it will run this function. And you can see we're just printing out the URL to the admin dashboard. Now, instead of hard coding this localhost 3000 right here, I'm going to add our port from the env file. So that's 3001. So let me just hit save. And if I should run this application, npm run dev, you see if we have any errors. Oh, I'm missing the dev script. Oh, I have the cd in my server folder. So cd server, then npm run dev. So it's starting. And you can see we have no errors. And it's saying that our application is running on 3001/admin. Let's just copy this and go to the browser and see what we get out of the box. Let's go to Edge, paste that in there. And here is our payload application. So when the application is created and there are no admin users, we get this welcome page. And you can see where it's the URL create first user. I'm just going to create a user here. Let me use my email address for a password, not a password, hit create. And this is what we get. Cool. So you can see we have our users collection. This is the only collection that was actually registered in the collections array. If we added that example collection, we'd actually see that here as well. So if we click on this users collection, we can see the admin user that was created by just now. We can view this admin user and make changes. We can change the password or we can change the email. So if I wanted to just change this to bayan@yahoo.com, click save, get a success message. And if we're logging in again, we'd have to log in with bayan@yahoo.com. Let me just check what's happening here. Let me just change this back before I forget. All right, cool. So let's try adding another collection to our API. Just jump back to VS Code. Minimize this. And in our collections folder, we are going to make some changes first to the user collection that we have here. And then we're going to add a customers collection. And the customers collection is the collection that will store our logged in users on the front end or for the front end. So you can see here where the slug is users. The auth is set to true. And this auth is just telling payload that this collection should allow individuals to log in with it, right? So let me just try to find that on Chrome real quick. Right, so collection configs, right? So payload collections are defined through configs of their own, and you can define as many as your application needs. Each collection will scaffold a MongoDB collection automatically based on fields that you define. It's often best practice to write your collections in separate files and then import them into the main payload config. So these are the options that you can actually pass to each collection that is created. We have a slug that's required, and that's just the URL that you'll use to access that collection. The fields, and we'll get into fields soon. You have a whole section on fields over here because you have many types of fields. Label, the labels that you want to assign to the collection, and I think this is just for the admin UI. You have an admin object, hooks. You can define who can access the collection. We'll actually take a look at this soon. You can add authentication to the collection. You can specify the collection as upload storage collection type of thing. We'll actually take a look at this soon as well. You can specify if you want the created at and updated at timestamps on your collection. You can add version and endpoints. Here we have a simple example of a collection. You can see this is an orders collection. So if you want to access this collection, you would hit your API endpoint /orders to get all the orders in this collection. Cool. And you can see the fields that are defined are just total and placed by. So let's just jump back to VS Code and make some more changes to our collection. All right, so right now we have the slug defined. We have authentication set to true. In the labels section, I'm going to add this label right here. So in our admin UI, it'll be called admin users instead of just users, like we saw just now. And the singular form for that is admin user. We also want to add some more fields to the admin object right here. One such field is group. So by default, every collection that is created is added to the collection group. But if you want to change this, you can actually just add a value in the group key right here. So I want this to be under the admin group. And let's just give it a small description as well. Now, this access object right here is very powerful, very important. Like I said earlier, it determines who can access what for this collection. You can see right here where this is returning. This is a function that returns true for the read access. This means that anyone that's anyone can actually read from this collection. Cool. Now, if we want to add another field to our users collection, like it says here, once you add auth to true, or you configure the auth object, the email and password fields will be added for you. So let's say we want to actually capture some other information for our logged in user. We can add an object to this, and the first thing we want to add is the name key. All right, and this is the key that will be stored in our MongoDB collection. So we want to call it full name, and the type for this field is a text, and these are actually the only two things that are needed. But let's just go ahead and add some more stuff. So for the admin UI, we want the label to be full name. We also want to add a placeholder to the input field on the admin UI. So I can just go ahead and say admin placeholder, enter your full name, hit save. We can also change the position of this text field by specifying that in this admin object as well. So if we say position, we can actually put this in the sidebar. And let me just show you what this looks like. Hit save, server is restarting. Good, no errors. And if we go back to our admin, we can refresh this. And you can see now where it's no longer collections, it's now admin, the group that we specified. And it's no longer just called users, it's called admin users. So if we click on this, we can see the full name field that we added to this collection just now in the sidebar. Cool. If we should add a name right here, save, then you can see that in the table out here. So that's how collections work in a nutshell. Very cool if you ask me. So let's just head back to VS Code right now and create our second collection. Now, let me just delete this one right here. And we're going to create a collection called customers. So customers.ts. The first thing we want to do is import the collection config, right? And then we are going to go ahead and define our collection. So const customers of type collection config is equal to that. Why am I getting these errors? Oh, so some properties are missing. That's why I'm getting this squiggly line here. Let me just export this. Right. So the first thing that we're going to add to this collection is the slug. And like I said earlier, this is just the URL string that we're going to append to access this collection when hitting our API endpoint. So it's going to be customers. So to access these customers, we're going to do something like localhost 3001/API/customers. Cool. Next, we want to add authentication to this because we want our customers to log in. And there are a few options that we can specify here. You can see a list of all of them here. You can also visit the website documentation, and let's see where it says auth. We can click on this, and these are all the authentication options that you can add. Cool. All right, so back to VS Code. For our customers, we're just going to add the token expiration, and this should be a number. and I'm going to set it to expire in 3 days. Cool. So this is just saying token expiration should be 3 days from the day it was created. Cool. So 60 times 60. So this is 60 seconds times 60. So that's 1 hour times 24. That's a day times 3. 3 days. Cool. We want to add a label for this collection in our admin UI. So this isn't really necessary because it's going to use the uppercase version of this, which is customers for plural, customer for one of them. Also, we want to add admin object right here, and what we want to use as the title, and the title, the user's title is just the field in the table that you can actually click to edit or delete the record. Cool. I want to add this to a group called customers and give it a little description as well. Now the fields that we're going to define for customers is as follow. So we have an object, just like the user collection, the email is added by default for us, so we don't need to specify that. Once we add this Auth object, email password is added for us automatically, right? So for our customer, we want to add another field, and in our MongoDB collection for customers, in our customers collection, this field is going to be called name, and the type is going to be text. We want to give this a label as well, so we'll just call it full name. We're going to say that it's required, so no customer can exist without the name field being populated. And we're going to add a placeholder in our admin UI for this. So it's going to say enter your full name in the placeholder for this input field. So let's just save that. And to use this collection, we have to go back to our configuration file and import it like we did with these users, right? The customers. And then we're going to register it in our array of customers. So let's go ahead. It's save after adding it to our collections array. Check the console. Application restarted, no errors. And then let's go ahead and check our admin UI. So nothing changed. Let's refresh. And now we have two groups. We have the admin group and the customers group. In the customers, we have no customer just yet, but we can go ahead and create one. And you can see where full name is required. It's a little red dot right here. And the placeholder is saying enter your full name. So from the admin UI, we can actually create a customer. Let me just go ahead and create one. Success. Or the start of valid email. And if we try to save it without entering the name, we should get an error message. Yep. And saying that the field is required. Hit save. And there we go. We have our test user. So the use as title key in our collection, where it's specified that the email is a title, this is what it's doing. So when we click, it's just specifying what field we want to be able to click on to edit or remove the record. If we want the API response for this specific record, we can just click on this link right here. You can see where it's saying localhost 3001/API/customers and the ID of this specific customer. So if I click on this right here, we can see the JSON response for this specific record. It's automatically sanitized for us. You can see where we're not getting back that password field. And that's just one of the many things that Payload does for us out of the box. If we hit customers like this without specifying an ID, we'll actually get back an object with the docs. So with the docs, and the docs will just be an array of all the records in this collection, and then we have some metadata like the total docs, limit, total pages, etc. All right, so let me just delete this user. Cool. And head back to VS Code to finish configuring our API. All right, so now we have our customers collection added. I want us to define the different access control. Now, it is recommended that we actually create a separate folder called access and add our different access files in here. So let me just create a new file called customers.access.ts. And this file is just going to determine, it's just going to have a function that determines who can actually view what for the customer collection. First thing we want to do is import the access type, or the access type from payload config. And then we are going to import the users collection because we're going to use the slug from this collection. And let me just define the first access function. So export cons, and I'm going to call it self or admin. This is going to return a type of access, and it's equal to a function. So what's happening here? In this function, we are going to get the request object from Express, and from this request object, I'm going to destructure the user. So this is the logged in user. I also want to get the ID. So this ID may or may not exist, and this is just the ID of the specific record that's being accessed in the collection. So what are we going to do in this access function? So I'm going to check to see if the person trying to access the customer is an admin user. So how we go about doing that is by saying if the user, meaning this user, is present and the collection of this user is exactly equal to our admin collection, right? So that's users dot slug. Then we just want to return true. So this is basically saying if an admin user is trying to access any record inside of the customer collection, allow them to. Cool. If the person is not from the admin collection, then we want to check if the user that's trying to access the record ID is exactly equal to the record that they're trying to access. So what this is saying is return true if this person's ID is exactly equal to the record that they're trying to access ID. Cool. So if I have a customer account and the ID of that account is 123, this ID would be 123 that I'm trying to access. But if I'm logged in and my user ID is 123, I should be able to access this. If it's anything else, then this will return false and you'll be denied access. Cool. Now in our customers collection, we are going to import this function. And for the access object, let me just define that right here. We're going to say we want anyone to be able to create a customer account. So just return true right there. And then for updating this account, we're going to say self or admin, which is that function we created just now. Cool. So like I said, the access object, you can add all of these properties: create, read versions, update, delete, admin, unlock. But we're only interested for this specific collection in the create and update methods or access rules. So the next collection that I want to create is the media collection. And Payload actually gives us a lot of documentation on the media upload. Let me just go ahead and show you guys this on their website. So here it's saying you can just click on upload and go to overview. It's saying that Payload provides everything you need to enable file upload, storage, and management directly on your server, including extremely powerful file access control. You can enable uploads on any collection by just configuring the upload object. And these are the options that you can pass into this upload object. And down here, they just give a simple example of what the media collection could look like. So let's just jump back to VS Code and get started on this. So the first thing we want to do, create a file that will be our upload collection. I'm just going to call this one media. It could be called uploads as well, but media works well. We're going to import our collection config and then create a media constant. Is going to return a collection config object, and we're going to export this media by default. Cool. So like all collections, you must give this a slug, and we're going to go with media. We can add fields, but fields aren't necessary for our media upload. If we want, like, let's say an alt text field on each file that's uploaded, we can add that in the fields array, but I won't be doing that just now. I'm going to add this admin object to put it in the media group and give it a little description. And then I'm going to add the upload object. So I'm going to set a static directory for the uploads, and this is just the folder that will be used to store our files. Cool. So I'm just going to name this file media, or this folder media, sorry, and this folder should be relative to the configuration path. So if we add it like this, media is going to be added inside our source directory. Cool. We also want to add a static URL, and this is just the part that our API will use when serving media files. So I'm just gonna call this one media, and then we have one more, well, not one more, two more options that we'll configure. The first one is the image sizes. Oh, it should be inside of upload. And this is an array that will determine array of objects that will determine what the different sizes of our image files are. So let me just copy and paste them in and explain them. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different files here, or file sizes here. So every time we upload an image, the image will be resized to fit the objects in this array. Cool. So the first one is avatar. You can see where the width and height is 150 and the position is center. So if the image dimensions, width and height are greater than 150, then we'll create this version of that image. If the dimensions are greater than the one specified here for thumbnail, we'll create this version of the image along with the original one as well. If the image dimensions are this big or greater, then we'll create this version as well. And same thing for the tablet version. Now, if you have an image that's, let's say, 250 by 300, then the thumbnail version will not be created. You'll only have the original image and the avatar, which is smaller. Cool. Last property that we want to specify in this payload object is the admin thumbnail, and this is just telling the upload which one of the images configured should be used as the thumbnail in our admin UI. So we could change this to avatar for the avatar dimensions to be used as thumbnail. We're still getting this error because we have to specify the fields array even if we're going to leave it empty. Cool. Now, once this is configured, we can just go to our payload config, import the media collection, and then register it in our array of collections right here. Let me do that. Hit save. See if we have any errors. No errors. And let's go back to our admin UI to see what's happening. So we refresh this and we have 3 groups. We have admin, customers, media. So let's add a media to see what it looks like. So here we can just choose a file. Let me just grab an image quickly. Save that. So once we hit save, you can see where our image is saved. And if we click on this more info, you can see the different versions that were created based on the dimensions of this image. So you can see it was 640 by 958. So we were only able to create the avatar and a thumbnail. Cool. And if we should hit this endpoint for this specific media file, you can see we get an object with the different file sizes and whatnot. And like I specified in the collection, the thumbnail right here is the thumbnail that's being used from this configuration. So the 400 by 300 is what's being used as the thumbnail. All right, so that should be it for the API side of things. Let's jump over to VS Code and create our Nuxt client. So back in VS Code, let me just close these up and open a new terminal. And we're going to run npx nuxt init. I'm going to call this one client. I'm going to cd into our client folder and install the dependencies. Let me just rename this terminal. All right, once our dependencies are installed, let me just go ahead and open the Nuxt folder. We're going to add a few things here. in true Nuxt fashion. Let's go ahead and add these packages. The first one being the Google fonts. Then we're going to add Tailwind CSS, Tailwind Forms. We're going to add vValidate, View Toastification, and vValidate rules. So let me just grab these. npm I that thing. This right here. And then for this one, I'm going to install this specific version. Hit install, see what happens. All right, package is added. And I'm going to add Tailwind CSS as a dev dependency. And the Google Fonts module as well. All right, so I think the incorrect version of our Google Fonts package was added. So let me just go ahead and change that manually. Save. What do I need to do? I need to delete these. I need to delete this. And then just run npm install in here again. All right, so with the dependencies installed, we can just go ahead and configure our Nuxt config file. You can see where we add the modules here. We're configuring Google Fonts. We're bringing in the Source Serif Pro and Interfont family. And we're telling it to use the style sheets and not download the fonts. Cool. We're configuring our Tailwind CSS module as well. We're going to add our own CSS path. And then we're adding the runtime config object right here, so we can load our env variables in our Nuxt application. So let me just go ahead and create this inside the client folder. And to it, I'm going to add the Tailwind utility, Tailwind directives. So Tailwind base, components, and utilities. We also need a Tailwind config file. So let me just create that as well. So tailwind.config.js. And let me just copy the configuration. So dark mode is set to class. The theme, we're extending the colors. We're going to use violet as our primary color. We are assigning this dark right here. And we're registering the different fonts that we're using. We're also registering the Tailwind CSS Forms plugin right here as well. So let's save that and close it. Save this as well. And then let's add a few plugins. The first plugin that I want to add is the vValidate plugin, and that will help with the form elements on our website or in our app. So let's just add a file called plugins, and we're going to call this vValidate.ts. Let me just copy and paste the code in. So we're bringing in the define role function from vValidate and the form component, and we're exporting the define Nuxt plugin function, registering the form component globally as vform, and we're defining these rules globally. So that's vValidate. We also want to add our Toast plugin. I'm going to call this one Toast client.ts. And this .client is just telling Nuxt to run this plugin on the client, not server side. So we're bringing in the Toast. We're bringing in the CSS for our Toast. and we're just registering it right here. Cool. So registering the Toast plugin, and we're adding a few options, default options. So let's close that. And I think we can start adding our pages. So to start with adding the pages, we just go and say Nuxt page in our app.view file. And then we create the page folder or pages folder and add the index.view file. So the index.view will act as our login page. I'm just going to go ahead and copy the template, right? So I'm not going to focus on the styles in this tutorial, more on the functionality. So we have this form and we have two inputs, the email, we're saying that it's required, and we have the password input that should be a minimum of 6 characters, and we have the sign in button. In our script setup, we are going to add the submit function. If I say script setup, we need a function called submit, because that's what we specified up here. It's going to be asynchronous, and it's going to get the values that are inside of the form. So that's how vValidate works. Whenever you fire this submit function, it will take all the values from the inputs in the form and pass them to the function as the first argument. The second argument is actually the form context. We won't be using it, so I won't add it there. So this function will get fired once the form submit button is clicked. Cool. Now, before creating or fleshing out this submit function, we have to add a few components and composables. So you can see here where we have this form input component, but it has not been registered. So let's go ahead and create that file. So we create components /form /input view. And let me just copy and paste this in and explain what's happening. So we have a label and an input field, and we're passing in these props to the input field. You can see where we're using the use field composable from vValidate, and this will just give us back some values like the error message to display the value that's currently inside of this input, along with two functions, handle blur and handle change. And of course, we're passing in the name of the field as the first argument, the rules, and then the configuration object. So once that's in place, we can hit save and head over to our composables. All right, let's go ahead and create the composables folder. Composables, that's spelled correctly. And I'm going to add the payload composable. So this payload composable will just hold all the functions that we'll use to communicate with our payload API. Cool. The first thing that I want to define inside of this composable is the Auth interface. Cool. So the Auth interface this just represent the values that we'll be using or taking from users whenever they try to sign up or log in. The first function is going to be the use payload URL function. Now, what this function is doing is just returning the base URL for API and the URL and prefix. Cool. So we're bringing in the config with the use runtime config from Nuxt. We're declaring the variables, and then we're checking if we're on the server or the client. Cool. So it's going to be, if we're on the server, we're going to use the values from here and assign it to URL, API prefix, assign it to the API prefix, and then create the base URL with the two values. This could be done in a much more efficient manner, but for this tutorial, this works just fine. We can actually just get the values from the public key, since they're the same in our runtime config. But just in case we want to add different URLs for client on the server side, then we can use this method. The next variable is going to be the variable that will hold the customer information or the logged in customer, right? So once the customer is logged in, we'll set the value globally here. An alternative to doing this is actually using Pinia, but I think Pinia would be overkill for this tutorial. So we're just going to use the use state composable and store our customer. We are getting this error because we have not defined the interface for our customer. So let me just do that right here, or maybe I should do it in types. Yeah, let's do that in types. So types, index.ts, exports the customer interface. Of course, we need a user interface as well, and a media interface. And if you're wondering where I got these types from, you can actually generate the types for your collection with Payload CMS. There's actually a command that's created once you create a project to generate the different types in your collection. So when I run that command, I got these things and I did a bit of modification, but it's pretty easy to adjust the different values. So we are going to bring in this customer type from types. Hit save right there. And then the next thing that we want to do is create our login function. Cool. So we come down here, paste that in. So use payload login. We're going to take in email and password. We're going to get the base URL from the function created up here. We're going to add our customer variable here from the use customer function. So here we're sending a request to the Payload API to log our customer in. So you can see where we're sending the login request to the customers collection. This is where we define the Auth object, and we're sending it to the login endpoint. This is a post request. The body is going to be the body that's passed in, which should be the email and password. We're setting the base URL, and we're setting credentials to include. Now, this is very important. If we don't have these credentials include in our requests, then Payload will not be able to set the HTTP only cookie on our response. So this has to be included in the request that you're sending in order for Payload to attach that cookie to the response that it sends back to the client. Now, we are going to get a response, and we just want to set the customer value to the response that we get right here, and then return the response from this call to whatever variable it's being stored in when it's called on in one of our view components. Next up, we are going to add our registration function, and it's going to be similar to our login one. So we get the data, which should be name, email, and password. We get the base URL, right? And then we are going to send a post request to our customer's endpoint. So this is going to create a new customer, right? And then once this is created, we're going to send the login request. So we're going to call this function and log the user in, and then return the customer that's created. So whenever someone registers, it's going to create that customer and then log them in automatically. All right, so the next function on our list is going to be the function that we're going to use to get our payload customer. So this is going to get the customer from the use customer function that we created up here, which is just the state of the logged in customer. And then we're going to send a fetch request to the customers/me endpoint. And this will just return the data associated with the logged in user, right? So it's a get request. We're adding the base URL. We're adding the credentials, and we have to add this header as well. So Nuxt provides us with this use request header composable, and what it allows is it allows us to send the cookie from the server. So whenever we make a request on the server, it's going to use all the headers from your browser in that request. You can pass in an array of the different headers that you want to include in the request. So if you want to send a cookie only, I think you can do something like this. But since I trust my server, I'm just going to send everything back. Now, if the user is defined or not null in the response that we get, we are going to set the customer value to the user. But if the user is not there, then we're going to set the customer value to null, meaning the person is logged out, and then return nothing. Cool. All right, so the last function in our payload composable is going to be the logout function. So this logout function is just sending a request to the customer's logout endpoint. And I think we should set the customer to null here. So customer value should be equal to null whenever we log out. All right, let me just go ahead and add one more function to this composable, and it's just going to be the use toast. This is just so we can show some message to our front-end user whenever they're doing something wrong or something right. And with all of this in place, let's just run our application and see if we are getting any errors. And we are already getting an error. I think this has to do with the tailwind config file. Let me see. So we cannot find the module tailwind CSS forms. All right, cool. So let me just stop this npm I tailwind CSS forms. Run that again. No error. So let's just jump to Chrome and see what's happening. And here is our login page. As you can see, the form looks weird. And that's because we did not include some styles in our main.css file. So let me just jump back to Chrome and add the styles quickly. Let me just close these. What do I want? I want assets main.css. Then we are going to override the styles provided by Tailwind CSS forms, and we can do that by just adding this to the base layer of Tailwind CSS. We also want to add a button component. So let me just paste the code for that right here as well. And if we look at Chrome, this should look the way we want it to. There we go. So if we try to log in, we get error messages from vvalidate. And as of now, our login, if we should enter some values, nothing happens because we haven't added the functionality for the submit function that we defined in our script tag. So let's just jump back to VS Code and get that done. So in pages, index.view, we can just go ahead and add the logic for our login. So let me just go ahead and copy and paste that here. Boom. So we're going to say that the customer is equal to the use payload login function, and this composable is defined here. And then once we're logged in successfully, then we should be navigated to the admin dashboard page. And we have not created this page as yet. So let's just go ahead and create that right now. So we're gonna come here and add admin / dashboard index.view. And in this page, let me just copy and paste the code. So you can see here we have a header with dashboard, and we're printing out the name of the customer that's logged in. We also have this button that I can use to log out. So once we click on this button, we call the logout function. You can see here where we're calling this use payload logout function that we registered up here. This will just send a logout request to the customer's endpoint and set the customer value to null. So we don't have to do this right here. And then we're going to reload the page. And once we reload the page, then we should be taken back to the login page. So let's just save this. See if there are any errors. There are no errors. It's just saying that the register page isn't created as yet. So let's just go ahead and create that. So we're going to add register / index.view. And this is going to be similar to our login page. We have the form with the different inputs, one for name, one for email, one for password. And then we have the button right here, create the account, another one to navigate to the sign in page, but most importantly, the submit function down here. So we're calling the use payload register composable that was created in this file. where is it? Use payload register, right? Passing in the email, password, and name from the vValidate values. And once we're logged in, then we're going to navigate to the admin dashboard and show this little message right here. Cool. The use head composable, we're just using this to update the title of the register page. So let's just save that. I think we need to restart our server. Now, once that's restarted, we can go back to Chrome. Our application is starting up. And we should be able to navigate between the different pages. So if I go to admin dashboard, it says, hey, all right, cool. So it's not displaying the name of the customer because we're not logged in. Now, we should not be able to access this page if we're not logged in. And to take care of that, we're going to use Nuxt route middleware. So how do we define a Nuxt route middleware? So the first thing that you want to do is add a middleware folder, right? And then you want to add the name of the middleware. In this case, we're going to call it Auth. And you can actually add the global to this file for the middleware to run on all of your routes. Or if you don't add the global suffix to it, then you will have to register this middleware manually in all the pages that you want it to run on. So because I want it to run on all of my pages, I'm going to add the global suffix to it, and then .ts. Cool. Now inside this middleware, let me just go ahead and copy and paste the code over and explain what's happening. So we're bringing in the use customer composable from Payload right here. So up here, we're bringing in this, right? And we're gonna assign it to this variable right here. Now, we want to check if the customer is null and they're trying to access a path that includes admin. So if there's no logged in customer and they're trying to go to a path that includes admin in the route, then we want to send them back to the home page, which in our case is the login page. Now, if a customer is logged in, meaning there's a value here, and the path that they're trying to access is the login page or the register page, then we're going to send them back to the admin dashboard. Cool. So if customer is logged in and they're trying to go to login or register page, take them back to the admin page. If they're not logged in and they're trying to go to the admin page, send them back to the login page. Let's hit save. And because we added a new middleware, I think we need to restart the server. And then we can go back to Chrome. And if I try to access this admin dashboard, you can see where I'm just taking right back to the login page. Cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and create our first user. So let's just give this person a name of test user, an email of test.test.com, and a password of 123456. Hit this create account button, and nothing happens, of course. Let's check our console to see what there is. Page not found. Undefined customer. Interesting. So what's causing this error? Let me jump back to VS Code and see what's happening. So go to register. admin dashboard to wait. Oh, I know what's causing this. We did not define our .env file. So let me just go ahead and add that file right now and add the values to it. So API URL should be localhost 3001 API prefix / API. So let me just save that. Stop this, restart it. Should be good. And then let's just head back to Chrome and see what's happening. So now if I should send a request, I think this user was already created. I'm not sure. Well, let me go and check. Nope. All right, so let's say test user test.test.com 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hit create account and we're logged in. So now we can actually access this dashboard page. Cool. All right, so now that I'm logged in, we actually still have a problem. We can access the admin dashboard page, but if we go to the login page, you can see where it's not redirecting us. And that is because our user is actually blank right now. So if we refresh our page, our user is actually removed. So let me just try to go back to admin dashboard and you can see we can no longer access the dashboard page. So what we have to do in this case is find a way to get our logged in user every time the page gets reloaded. And the best way to do that is to actually use plugin, a plugin that will run every time we reload a page, both on the server side and the client side. Cool. So let's just jump back to VS Code. And in this plugins directory, I'm going to create a plugin called Get Me. And what this plugin is going to do is it's just going to call the function that will populate our user or customer every time we reload the page or they reload the page. So it's going to export default define Nuxt plugin. We're going to make it asynchronous because this is going to be a call to our API. And we're going to say await use get payload customer. And if you remember, this was defined in the composable here. Where is it? Use get payload customer, right? So we'll send this fetch request to this endpoint and include credentials and send the headers. So this part is specifically for sending the request from the server. This part is for the client. On the client side, this will be null. But on the server side, it will have all the errors from our browser. This one here is null on the server, but on the client side, it will include all the headers. So save this. We may need to restart this application. And let's go back to Chrome. and you can see we're already logged in. So if we try to go to in page, it takes us back. If we try to go to the register page, we're taken back here. We can only access those pages if we log out. Cool. So now that we're logged out, if we try to go back to the admin page, it won't happen. See? We try to go there manually, it will just kick us back here. And the only way to access that page again is if we actually log in again. Cool. So I think there are 3 things that will actually get your authentication working on the front end in Nuxt. You have to have a state that will hold your logged in user, preferably a global state. So if you're using Pinia, you can store it there, or you can just use the use state composable from Nuxt. You have to have a middleware to protect the different routes, and you have to have a plugin that will actually set that user that's logged in every time you reload the page. Cool. But that's basically it, guys. Like I said, check out the payload documentation. Really cool. Nuxt, really cool as well. You all know I love Nuxt. I may actually do some React in the future, but Nuxt works for now. So until next time, peace.